I'm sure by now you probably know that different companies take different approaches when it comes to delivering similar products. It doesn't matter if you're buying an electric car, a pair of headphones, or a brand new smartphone. Companies like Samsung and Huawei are known to go overboard, or just a little bit, flaunting features like 100x space zoom, foldable displays, and 120 Hz refresh rates for their displays. And let's not forget, phenomenal cosmic power. Okay, I have to admit that that last one is Jafar from Aladdin, but I think that you get the point here. These products are bold and innovative, and no one's really denying that. But all that bombast usually comes with a price, one that leaves your bank account looking like you've been scammed by a Nigerian prince. At the opposite end of the spectrum, you get this, the LG V60. The phone is a little bit unassuming, but it has most of the same specs that the other big boys are playing with this year. And it comes with an odd case that gives it a secondary display. And the best part about it though, is that it's 50% cheaper than some of its closest competitors. But the question is it any good? Well, let's find out. I'm Nick from Phandroid, and this is my review of the LG V60. LG's been a major player in the Android space since the very first days of Android. After toying with the modular smartphone concept back with the LG G5 in 2016, the company's flagship devices have been relegated to the back burner as other competitors have been stepping up their game. But the LG V60 sets a different tone this year, delivering a phenomenal experience at just the right price that could make consumers think twice before blindly handing over their cash to Samsung this year. Now, I know that a smartphone's price isn't the most important factor when we all consider buying a new device. If it was, the Galaxy Z Flip wouldn't exist and we'd all be walking around with a mid-range Motorola device in our pockets. It's more about achieving the right balance, and to me, the V60 achieves just that. So, how much does it cost? You can't buy the phone unlocked, but the cheapest price from a US service provider is $800 for the phone and $900 if you want the phone and the dual screen case. Compared to the new Galaxy S20 lineup, that's a steal since you still get the same Snapdragon 865 chipset, 5G, and a camera setup that's worthy of the phone's flagship status. That being said, since this phone is selling for 20% less than Samsung's Galaxy S20 base model, LG did have to make a few compromises. The V60 comes with a lower resolution Full HD Plus display. It only has 8 GB of RAM, and the triple camera setup on the back of the phone is comprised of a standard, ultra-wide, and time-of-flight sensor setup. That's right, the ever-popular telephoto camera that everybody else is using is simply missing on this device. But while the phone is lacking in a few places, the V60 makes up for it in others by featuring a 5,000 mAh battery, a quad microphone system for incredible audio recording, a 3.5mm headphone jack, and LG's unique quad DAC setup, which delivers an impeccable audio experience for a smartphone. Put all of that together, and the LG V60 could be one of the best smartphones of 2020. If you're a fan of big phones, the LG V60 will be right up your alley. It has a 6.8-inch display, which is massive, but the lack of a curved panel means that there are significant bezels all the way around. While this makes the front of the phone just a little bit less appealing than what its competitors offer, the flat panel does improve usability with fewer false touches with the side of your hand and dramatically reduces glare along the phone's edges. To keep the cost down, you only get a Full HD Plus resolution and a 60 Hz refresh rate, but you won't really be able to notice individual pixels unless you go looking for them or if you've owned a device with a higher resolution panel. A hole punch for the front-facing camera would have been a little bit less noticeable than a centrally located notch like the LG V60 has, but honestly, it's not a huge issue. The metal and glass design of the phone isn't dramatically different than last year's V50, but when you flip the phone over to the back, you will notice that LG did add a ring to outline the cameras, which also features a slight bump due to the increase in size for the camera sensors LG is using this year. And when holding the phone in your hand, you'll definitely feel the added heft and girth. I'll tell you this, a 5,000 mAh battery isn't light, and it definitely takes up a lot of space. The Snapdragon 865 is undoubtedly the must-have chipset of the year if you're looking for a flagship smartphone with 5G connectivity. It delivers incredible performance on the V60, giving you more than enough power to play the best games Android has to offer and keep the phone's UI stutter-free. If you're a hardcore multitasker, you might be a little bit disappointed that this phone only has 8 GB of RAM, but it's honestly more than enough to satisfy the majority of users. You may occasionally notice an app being dumped from memory, but unless you're consistently switching back and forth between games, you shouldn't have to wait more than a second or two for the Snapdragon 865 to load it right back up. Now, LG didn't add this massive battery to compete with the Galaxy S20 Ultra. The extra capacity is needed to keep the phone's dual display powered up. Without it though, the LG V60 can easily make it through a day and a half or even 2 full days on a single charge with more than 10 hours of screen on time. It's not the best battery life that we've ever seen, but it's definitely up there. As you can imagine, the dual display does eat into that just a little bit. You'll easily be able to make it through a full day with 7 to 8 hours of screen on time, even if you keep the dual secondary display powered on continuously. No matter how you slice it, if you're using the secondary display or not, you'll have a very hard time killing the LG V60 in a single day. To top the battery off, you do get Qualcomm's Quick Charge 4.0 Plus, which will take the phone from 0 to 100% in an hour and 40 minutes. The phone also does have wireless charging, but you won't have the fancy reverse wireless charging features that Samsung and Huawei have been including on their flagship smartphones for the past couple of years. I have to admit that when looking at the camera specs of the LG V60, it seems to lag a little bit behind other flagship smartphones that we've seen in 2020. The main 64 megapixel on the back of the phone does feature 4:1 pixel binning for 16 megapixel shots, and then you get a 13 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, something that LG pioneered back in the day. Other than that, there's a time of flight sensor for depth information, but LG left out the ever popular telephoto camera, which Samsung, Oppo, and Huawei have been using as their main marketing feature for their new flagship devices. That being said, the V60 still offers 2x hybrid zoom thanks to its 64 megapixel main sensor, which honestly turns out nearly as sharp as what we've seen from other smartphones with a dedicated zoom camera. But while the hardware that LG is using is pretty simple, the image quality that you get out of them is superb. The image processing is natural with great dynamic range, consistent white balance, and accurate color reproduction. The large sensor and pixels also deliver great low light shots. The only disappointment here is that LG has a long ways to go before catching up with its competitors when it comes to the phone's dedicated night mode settings. While not having a dedicated telephoto camera is disappointing, I'm glad that they opted to go with the ultra wide angle lens instead. Having a wider field of view is amazing for landscape photography and also pictures in cities as well, giving you shots that honestly change the way that you see the world. The phone's 10 megapixel front-facing camera is on par with what we've seen from the competition this year, though the 30mm lens doesn't give you a whole lot of extra room for capturing selfies with you and your friends. And if you're into capturing video, all cameras can capture 4K videos at 30 frames per second, but the main one can go all the way up to 60 FPS and go even further and take that all the way up to an 8K resolution. If I had to choose one feature to completely swap out on the LG V60, it would be LG's software. I'll be honest, the amount of bloatware on this phone is completely out of control. And since all variants of the phone, specifically in the US, are only sold through service providers, there's no option for a clean, unlocked build. But even once you uninstall all of the apps that you don't want, you're still left with a launcher that lacks some pretty basic customization options. And the app drawer itself has a hard time even keeping your apps organized alphabetically. Swapping in an alternative launcher is probably the best way to go, but it still won't fix all of the problems. And the issue also persists while using the dual screen case as well. Now, I do have to hand it to LG for adding a lot of extra functionality to the dual screen setup. You can use it as a full keyboard and pretend that your phone is a miniature laptop, turn the screen into a dedicated gaming controller, watch movies on both displays at the same time, or even have an app span both screens at once. The most common use case of running 2 applications at once, one on each screen, is simple enough. But anything other than that requires multiple taps and takes quite a bit of time to organize how you want. LG might be able to fix things with adding unique gestures in the future or keeping an eye out on what Microsoft is doing with the upcoming Surface Duo. Don't get me wrong, the dual screen case for the LG V60 isn't bad, not by a long shot. I spend hours watching movies and shows with it on one screen while keeping up with social media on the other. It's currently the closest thing that you're going to get to the Samsung Galaxy Fold while saving half of your money. Before I wrap things up, I'd like to point out that the LG V60 is one of the best devices on the market right now when it comes to media consumption. Not only do the stereo speakers here offer an immersive audio experience, but you also get a real 3.5mm headphone jack and a spectacular quad DAC to go along with it. Now you'll need a good pair of wired headphones and a high quality streaming service like Tidal to take true advantage of both of those features, but any true audiophile should have those squared away already. When all is said and done, I have to say that the LG V60 here is a spectacular smartphone. Now it might be missing one or two of the features that Samsung's included on its Galaxy S20 lineup, but the combination that LG has presented delivers a mix of features that also includes some of the things that Samsung has on its most expensive Galaxy S20 Ultra, while still coming in a lot lower than the $1,000 threshold that Samsung is delivering its cheapest device for. Is it perfect? Not by a long shot, but the LG V60 strikes just the right balance, delivering an experience that's perfect for the average consumer while also appealing to those who may be interested in something a little bit out of the ordinary with a dual screen case. Thank you guys so much for watching my LG V60 review. If you want to see how the cameras on this smartphone compare to the competition, make sure you check out my LG V60 camera comparisons, which are linked right over here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.